Hello, friends. Welcome back to another edition of the Lovecast with Jamal podcast. You are listening to episode 182, and Aly Sousa is back on the podcast with us. We're going to continue our series into the seven major. I don't even know what we call these seven triggers or seven
major ways that we leak energy.
Yes, 7 ways that we leak energy. And we're going to be talking about another one of the 7. We talked about one last time, a couple weeks ago and a couple episodes ago. And we're back today and we're going to be talking about a big one. But before we get into that, Aly, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Good. I'm glad to be here. Very glad to be here. Yeah,
yes.
Going to be traveling. So it's kind of a little bit crazy today just before I leave tomorrow. But yeah, I'm glad to be here.
You're going to be all over the country, traveling to Wisconsin and North Carolina. And
and you just got back from Tahoe. I'm a little envious.
Lake Tahoe, probably one of the most beautiful places in the country.
It is.
Unbelievable. California. California gets a bad rap, and sometimes I get it, understandably so. But there is no more beautiful place in the country and maybe in the world than California.
The last time I was in Lake Tahoe was several years ago, and we snuck my mother-in-law away, and we did a hot air balloon off a barge from the middle of Lake Tahoe. So it launched and landed on the barge. And
unbelievable.
And I've hot air ballooned over Napa before, but this guy was very, very good at what he did. He had done it all over the world. And I asked him when we were up in the balloon, I said, well, what's your favorite place to hot air balloon in the world? And because he named off several places, including Africa. And he said, this place was by far the prettiest he felt like and best place to hot air balloon.
Lake Tahoe. Yeah. I mean, it's breathtaking. And the amount of, just the mountains, you're up in elevation, but the lake itself, I was expecting, we live in the mountains here up in Crestline, Lake Arrowhead area. And I was thinking like Lake Arrowhead, like I didn't realize. It's like, no, this is like a great lake. This is a massive lake.
Yeah.
So I was blown away. Love it. And they had over 700 inches of snow this season so far. And
lots of skiing and snowboarding still.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So it was a great trip.
So exciting. I'm jealous. I haven't been there in several years. It's so pretty. It makes me want to go. And I'm not a big snow person, but I just love it. Every time I'm there, I'm like, I think I could live here. I could get over the snow and live here.
Yeah, it's a lot of snow, that's for sure. But the beauty just is breathtaking.
Yeah.
Totally is. Well, we're talking again about, and I think this is such a timely episode just for, I think, we're kind of midway. We're almost to the end of the first quarter of the year. People are busy. I have a lot of things going on my plate. I know you have a lot of things going on your plate, but the most important, somebody said this recently, and they said, when we consider, what do we consider wealth, right? We consider wealth. Some people consider their money, their wealth. Some people consider their possessions, their cars, their houses, where they live, wealth. But really the only wealth that we possess ultimately is our life.
Absolutely.
And our life's energy.
Right.
And when we leak our life energy, our life force away, we're losing our wealth and our true wealth. So, but it's not something that's lacking. So we don't really need to lose it. But there's these things that rob us of our energy. And we've been talking about that in this series. And so today's a big one. We want to talk about a specific one. So Aly, why don't you jump right into it? What is today's
number one
major number one
issue
that causes us to leak energy?
It's exhaustion due to overdoing and multitasking.
Wow. Overdoing and multitasking.
Yep.
I feel like all the threes on the Enneagram need to listen.
Yeah.
Listen to this one. I mean,
I'm telling you.
I'm not a
Maybe,
3, but I need to listen to it too.
yeah, maybe some of the eights too. Eights have that
Yes, too.
powerful, yeah, energy and magnetism. But yeah, we sure can be kind of unaware. This is an area where
Mm.
we are really can be unconscious and unaware, blithely, woefully, to
Mhm.
how busy we become and how
Mm.
addicted to busyness we are, right? Yeah.
Totally. Exhaustion due to overdoing and multitasking.
Yep.
What do you think the root of this is?
I think a lot of it's conditioning in
Okay.
programs.
Okay.
Yeah, I do. I think a lot of it is in America in particular. I mean, when we're in Europe, um, it's lesser, although over the years, I mean, I've been traveling to Europe over 31 years now, and it's definitely the paces have picked up in Europe. I feel like too, even on that little bitty island we spend so much time on in the summer.
Interesting. Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's a Western phenomenon that's just kind of um, influenced there, but
Mhm.
um, yeah, I think that the programs and the conditioning, the attachments that we have to our value and our worth being found in what we produce, how successful we are, if we win versus lose, how much money we
Mhm.
have, how many things we've accrued, on and
Mhm.
on it goes.
Mhm.
What do you think?
Oh, yeah, I think you're spot on. It's interesting. When I was a few years ago, when I was spending some time in Europe, Switzerland specifically, there is a there's a family I was spending some time with, and he invited us over for dinner. And I love the way they even eat dinner
Yeah.
in Europe, because it's courses. It's several
Yes.
courses,
Over
and it's
hours of conversation.
hours. Yeah, it's just
Yes.
long, and I love it. It's like this is
Yeah.
fantastic. And I mentioned to him, I was telling him, we were in a conversation, and I was telling him about how different life is in Europe, in my experience, than life in the United States. And I was asking him, why does he think that? The same kind of conversation. And he said, well, you have to understand, Europe is like someone in their 40s and 50s. He said they're more approaching middle age, and said, people in their middle ages, he's like, they realize what's important. And so they recognize that relationship's important, conversation's important,
Mm,
connection is important. He said, but when you're in your 20s and you're trying to conquer the world, he said, we've been there. Europe has conquered the world many times.
yeah.
And he said, we've been there. He said, so we've been there and we've done that. We're not impressed anymore. He said, America's like a kid in their 20s. They're still trying to conquer the world. They're
Yeah.
climbing the ladder. And he said, but Europe is like Middle Ages. He's like, we figured out what's important in life and
Yeah.
what's not important. And I thought that was a really
Good
um,
analogy.
good analogy as to, I mean, because the older you get, you do start to realize like none of this is going to last. All the
Mm-mm.
things we're chasing are very temporary. That's really
Right.
interesting
It is.
concept. I think
Totally.
that's part of it too. I think so. Conditioning is a huge part of it, right? So especially if you grew up in the West, and when I say West, I mean more maybe the United States, we're really conditioned to be successful or productive.
Yes. And
But
to attach our value and our worth to those things, to our production and our work ethic. Being,
mhm,
having this, my grandma would talk a lot about our work ethics. And,
yeah,
you
totally.
know,
I heard a lady recently say this, and it really was provocative, and I loved it. She said, sometimes the most productive thing you can do is to take a nap.
yes. So
And I
true.
thought about that. I was like, take a
Yes.
nap. What happens when you
Yes.
take? And she said, because energy. She's like, how you do something is much more important than what you actually do. How you
Right.
do something. So
Right.
if you do something from this a feeling of, I'm behind, I need to catch up, I have a lot of things on my to-do list and I need to get them done and I'm not getting them done. Even if you check off the to-do list in that energy, it becomes resistive and counterproductive in nature, because now what you're doing is you're resisting this moment the way it is because you feel behind and you're trying to
Right.
get things done. It's
Yeah.
interesting that idea of getting something done. Like, can we get life done? Like, it's interesting. Like, what if we did nothing? Like, for example, the most important things that are happening on the planet right now. I mean, just the simple things like the earth is spinning on its axis, which, by the way, without that, none of this happens. We wouldn't have this conversation. There is no productivity. There's no human accomplishment. There's no economy if the world just doesn't spin. But we're not spinning the world. Like, we're not doing that. It's being done.
Right.
The oceans are doing their thing.
Right.
The air is doing its thing. There's everything. The sun is doing its thing, right? It's all this energy is being beamed. The most important things in life we don't actually do.
Yes.
So, but it's interesting that we really feel like we have to get life done.
It's so true. And we are really being lived. I mean, if you think about it,
say more about that. Being lived.
Yeah. I just think it much like, the wave in the ocean. It's the ocean, the movement, the larger aspect of what the ocean is the movement of the waves. And our connection to source, to that same energy, is living in and through us. So we're being lived rather than, and when you understand that, I think it also removes this attachment to this belief that I am the doer of action. I mean, it really, like, if you consider that, like, really stop to consider and contemplate, who am I really at my core if I'm not the doer of action?
Oh, that's a good question. If I'm not the doer of action, then what am I?
Who and what am I really if I'm not the doer of action? So these conditioned programs of like overdoing, multitasking, or, I mean, they really they've waylaid us in a lot of ways. We haven't understood that we're being lived. So we've got to do it. So then what happens is we attach to outcomes. If we believe we're the doer of action, then we're in control of it all. And we're in control of the outcome of it all. Wow. Rather than the ocean moving the waves and moving through and all that goes with that, and we're being lived, and we cooperate and co-labor with that process already in play. Versus, we're not the creator, the source of it.
Right.
It's happening in us, just like breathing is happening in me.
Totally. And it's happening, and you're really not consciously doing it.
No.
It may be safe to say that you're participating with it.
Yes. Cooperating with it. Absolutely. I can suspend it by holding my breath.
Right.
But, hold my breath for too long, and its movement and its trajectory wants to come through. The energy wants to come through. I can really jack myself up if I continue to hold my breath without allowing the force of that energy and the movement and the flow of it to move through me and cooperate with it.
So with breathing, the most productive thing you can do is to not effortlessly do. Like, if you have to use effort to breathe, something's wrong.
Yeah.
So to breathe effectively, you don't consciously force it. You allow. You're allowing. You allow it. You let it be what it is, and then participate with it.
Yes.
I mean, I like the analogy of the surfer, right? So the surfer, no surfer goes to the beach thinking that they're going to make, we're going to create some successful waves today. Like, no, they don't think that. They go to the beach and they look for the waves, and then they decide to ride the waves, right? But so a successful surfer is somebody who rides the waves, not creates the waves.
Exactly. And they're just moving with it, and they understand the movement and the flow. There's a great movie to watch with regard to that. It's rooted in a true story. It's called Mavericks. And it's about a young boy, and the energy of the movie reminds me of Chariots of Fire, where it was like from a young age, this kid was like God created him to be on the wave, surfing, literally. And something in him resonated and intuited that. He understood the movements of the waters and the functionality. I mean, like at a scientific level almost. And it's so beautiful as he grew in that and learning that. And we can learn that too, as we become intentional and aware of being lived versus I've got to create my own living.
To-
I'm
right. This is a tough one. I mean, I grew up, as you know, we've talked about this before, but I grew up in a household in the Midwest of the United States. My dad comes from third world country where, where everybody's in fight or flight survival mode. So, I was always taught, and I wasn't taught this consciously, but more unconsciously, but even from my mother's side, a lot of generational poverty. What I was taught was, in order to make it in life, like make it mean not like make it well, like in order to really just get by, to just kind of survive sometimes, is you have to work really hard. You have to work really hard to
yeah,
just scrape
yeah,
by. And
yeah.
that's what I was taught. Now, I know other people that were taught, if you work really hard, you can do well. You can actually earn a good income. You can live very well, comfortably. You can have nice things, nice houses and cars, and if you work really hard. And so those folks typically do that. They work really hard and they have nice things. I know people who were taught you work hard and you'll barely survive, and they do that. They work really hard and they barely live.
Survive. Yeah.
But then I started to meet people throughout the course of my journey that did not work hard
Mm,
and did very well.
it did very well.
And I thought, wait, they seem to violate, because I was taught you have to work hard just to survive. Forget about doing well. That's for fortunate people.
What do you think the difference was in them and those people?
In the people that were doing well and weren't working hard.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, what I've discovered, I remember having this conversation. One of them, I was talking to two people actually one day, and it was one guy is the CEO of a very successful company, and the other guy worked for him. And so I was talking to the guy who worked for him, and he was successful, worked really hard for the company. He was the CEO he was sitting next to. But he was barely making it. He was like just getting by. And I was asking him, we were talking about money, the conversation of money came up. And I said, how was it with you? And he grew up in a very religious home. And he goes, I just remember, he goes, my mom and dad had a lot of kids. And he goes, I just remember there were times that we would all go out to a restaurant to eat. And we're all sitting at the table. And he goes, I would look at the menu, and no one had to tell me this. I just knew it was the right thing to do. He said, I would look at the menu and I'd find the cheapest thing on the menu and order it.
Wow.
Because I
Wow.
knew that my parents were worried about how much this bill was going to be.
Yeah. Wow.
And he said, and then I looked at the CEO and I said, can you relate with that? And he goes, not at all. I said, what do you mean? He goes, we never thought about that. He said, we just got what we wanted. And he goes, my parents never actually talked about money. They just said, hey, whatever you do, just do it well. And we'll help provide, we'll provide it for you, but you have to do it. Like, we're not going to just like, if we'll provide it for you, but we want you to jump in with both feet and do whatever it is with the best of your ability and enjoy it.
Yeah.
But there was never a perception of lack. There was never a perception of not enough. And so therefore this guy started his own company. He's like, I got the funding. He's like, I didn't have the money when I started my company, but I went and found it. I got it.
Wow.
And it was like, it was just, it was like no big deal for him.
Yeah,
He just
yeah.
went and got it,
He
started
wasn't
it.
apologizing for it. He was like,
Wasn't apologizing for it.
Yeah, yeah. Wow.
It was because his framework, he wasn't conditioned with the belief that there was not enough.
Yes.
But the other guy was.
Yeah.
He was conditioned with the framework that there wasn't enough. And so therefore he struggled. So it's almost like we will live out
Yeah.
our initial programming, not because it's real.
Right. But because
So it's like, wow.
What we've known, what we've been programmed to believe.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's
so
interesting.
True. It is. And it's sad because when we've bought into the program of that, or we remain unaware of it, there's never time. And it really has been an acceptable, we're obviously, addiction is a big part of our societal issues as well. And I would say one of the most acceptable addictions is this attachment, this idea of busyness, to success, to doing, to producing. I mean, you're given awards for it, you're giving bonuses for it, you're it doesn't matter if it's an 80-hour week and you have no time for rest or play or contemplation or stillness or just being unplugged,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
And I think it comes back to it's a radical thing to actually truly, I don't even like the word believe, but to observe. A lot of people are still convinced that productivity is a result of our making,
Yeah,
when productivity is not a result of our making. Productivity is a result of participating with life.
absolutely.
That literally that, and I think if we can, so the real, when we understand that the engine of life is life, not me. When I say
Yeah,
me, what do I mean by that? I mean my caricature, right? My physical body mind
right.
construct, my persona, the things, the plans that I have. When I realize that the engine of life is actually life,
Mm,
that life itself is moving, then
yes.
it's kind of like if I was on a boat, right, in the river's moving because it's a river, right? If it's not moving, it's not a river. It's a
Right,
pond, it's a stagnant body of water, but
right,
life is a river.
right.
It's moving. So if I truly know that it's like, would you strain, let's say the river's moving quickly, people don't strain themselves. I've been on rafting trips. Tay and I, my wife, we went on a rafting trip maybe last year sometime, and it was a workout.
Yeah,
Because the
yeah,
water was not moving. So it means
yeah.
we put the boat in, and we're, using the
Right,
oars, and
right.
it's a wet workout. And oh man, we were sore at the end of the day. It was a lot. That's because the water wasn't moving.
Yeah,
So we had to move. But if we understand that life is a river, if we really can observe that life is movement, then why in the world would you spend all that energy using your oars to try to work, to try to get ahead? Because I tell people all the time, I say, you're going to get where you're going. Trust me. I
right.
say, where are we going? Well, ultimately, if we just take a little bird's eye view and take a step back, I think we're headed to the grave. And I don't think, I know that. Like the
Yeah,
like every human being
right,
is headed to the grave.
right.
So what how do you get there? You're going to get there. Like you don't have to even worry about how to get there, because you'll get there.
Yeah,
So sometimes, like my niece, she's almost 6 years old now, and it's Tay's sister's daughter, and sometimes I'll kid around with her when I see her, and I'll say, great job. She's like, what are you talking
what
about? I was like,
for?
look at you. And she's like, what did I do? I said, you're growing. She's like, I didn't do that. I was like, I know,
Exactly. It's just happening to a
but
lot.
you
That's
are.
life happening to her.
You're being grown, right? It's
Yeah, you're being
happening.
grown. Exactly. We're being lived.
Regard Totally. If we could understand this, it sounds really simple and cliche. And I know
Yeah.
the objections. I know the objections. The objections are, well, how will you do anything? How will you tell me I just have to sit around and everything will just come to me and happen? Y- Well, I mean, I like to come back to, it's like, well, how did the earth happen? How did the universe happen? How much money did it cost? How much was somebody being very productive to get this thing here? Like, no.
No.
It just it came from alignment with source.
Well, and that's interesting you bring that up because was it last year? Maybe it was in 2020. We watched this documentary called The Year the Earth Changed. Have you seen
Hmm.
it or heard of it?
No,
It's
no.
it's narrated by David Attenborough.
Okay.
At, he's got this beautiful baritone English voice. Look it up, but it's called The Year the Earth Changed. And it was during the height of the COVID thing. And like all of us, that was during the height of lockdown. The whole planet
Mm-hmm.
was locked down.
2020. Yep.
So, I mean, if you just look at what happened, I mean, we travel a lot in the world. I mean, it's profound how it affected humans in terms of this idea of doing and the addiction to doing, because we no longer could do. We were in our homes, forced to be in our homes, couldn't run about and be doing 50 billion things. Literally everything shut down. Well, in this documentary, what it does is it goes around the world and it shows you what happened in that year that humans were locked down when we were now being forced to connect because the opposite of addiction, this addiction to busyness, is always going to be connection.
Mm,
That's what it is.
interesting.
Connection is the opposite of addiction. People that are
Oh,
addicted, struggling with addiction, are not connected. So it completely disrupted, it thwarted our addiction to busy and doing. We were told, sorry, that's not happening. So people came in. I mean, I don't know about you, but that first month, it was like, wow. I mean, obviously there's the fear of what's really going on and all those things.
sure.
But on the flip side of it, if we're honest, it's like we got to hang out, we got to connect face to face. I mean, it disrupted everything. Well, this documentary shows the prolific effect in energy that affected the animal kingdoms of the world.
Really?
And it gives the statistics, and it goes around. It's brilliantly done. The scenery, and they take you into the animal kingdoms, all different kinds, all over the planet, and how everything came back to life.
Amazing.
Because
Just from
we got out of the way. We were forced to get out of the way. We got out of the way. Our busyness had to stop. We didn't have a choice. We all had to come in, face each other, get more deeply connected. I mean, pregnancy, all of that stuff. I mean, it really profoundly impacted, well, the animal kingdoms of the world, the bug populations. It just was, it expanded dramatically in every way you possibly can imagine. And they give the befores and afters in the stats too. It's called the year the earth changed.
the year the earth changed. And a lot of it, what I'm hearing you say was the life on earth flourished from this year of rest for the most part.
It forced us into rest. It forced us to start seeing where we're leaking. We started to see the holes in our force, in our energy force and field.
Sure.
And the animals, and there was a reverberation of that. Because all of us are connected. It's all connected. So as we came in towards ourselves and in towards each other in greater ways, and began to understand, wow. And now you talk to people that have working remotely. A lot of these big corporations, they didn't bring people back up full time. I mean, into their things.
It kind of exposed the facade of productivity, right?
Absolutely, of the activity. And it's been much more productive in lots of ways for lots of big businesses, small businesses as well, allowing people to be home. They're more productive. They, they can work from home in their pajamas online if they want, maybe come in 1 or 2 days a week.
Yeah, totally. We're taught. I was talking actually this morning, having a conversation with somebody, and we were talking about why this is such a difficult concept, because we're taught. I think the way we're taught that life happens is that, number one, you want to have a lot of things.
Yeah.
So we're taught, in order to have a good life, you have to have a lot, right? You got to have cars, you got to have houses, you got to have money, you have all these things. Nothing wrong with any of that. But we're taught you got to have that. And in order to have that, you have to do things, right? If you don't do anything, you won't have anything.
Right.
So then we're taught, well, you better get busy doing so you can have. And then if you do enough, if you're busy enough, then you can have enough. And then you can finally, if you're lucky, you can be, maybe in spurts, you can be vacation, maybe be retirement eventually at the end of your life.
Yes.
But the goal is to get to, we're trying to get to being, right? Yes. If we have, by doing, then we can be. But in reality, that's not how life works. It's just the opposite. We must, and we have to start with being first.
Absolutely.
You be first. Then from being, you can do some things. And what you do, by the way, will be in alignment with the being, and not out of alignment.
It'll flow out of this sense of being.
Totally. That's why someone said the most productive thing you can do is to take a nap. Why? Because when you take a nap, what are you doing? You're being.
Absolutely.
And when you come back to being, the energy, begins to come into alignment. Then the clarity, what happens is you gain a measure of clarity from the being. Clarity for what? Clarity to know what to do.
Is clarity about your energy, how to best use your energy, where to
how do we want to spend it.
Absolutely.
Totally. And then from that place, you may have some things, right?
Yep.
But you cannot start with doing. You cannot start with doing to have. You have to start with being.
Right.
If you start with being, there's no problem, right? Because in the level of being, whenever you're being, I always say, how do you know if you're being? Well, number one, you feel abundant. That's how you know if you're being. You feel abundant because being's
Expanded,
abundant.
abundant. Yep.
You feel not late or early,
Yep.
but right on time. You feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
You feel significant. You feel
Yep.
loved and connected. These
Yep.
are the states of being that you experience when we learn. And again, it's a process of cultivating that state within. But that is the most productive thing anybody can do, is to get into alignment with being, which takes care of the multitasking thing, right? Because if we're trying to multitask and people are exhaustion because they're just like, man, because we're trying to catch up. We're trying to
Yep.
we want to be productive. And it
Yeah.
just you never get there.
Yeah. And that's another, this whole idea of being programmed and conditioned to believe that we are the doer of action, essentially. I am what I produce. I am how much I succeed. I am how much I win. Henry Nouwen talked about he classified it in three different ways. And he said, we are not what we do. We are not what we have, and we're not what other people say we are. So
I love
really
that.
getting clear on, am I operating by any of those three things? Buying into the belief that I am what I do, I am what I have, and I am who other people say I am. And that's a part of this program, that mimicking of, they call it what do they call it? Keep up with the Joneses.
Sure.
Type of idea, this whole idea of desire, and we're mimicking desire, and this belief that I am what other people think I am. I need to project myself in this certain way, having all these things, doing all this, seeming to succeed well in all of it. How many likes do I have? I mean, you know what I'm saying? But this idea of multitasking is an interesting thing. I did a little bit of research on it, and I think it's linked in the article that I sent you. But it's done by I think he's like a neurobiologist. His name is John Medina, and research has proven this now scientifically. So it's well documented. You can look this up. The brain cannot multitask. Multitasking when it comes to paying attention is a myth. The brain naturally will focus on concepts sequentially, one at a time. To put it bluntly, research now shows that we cannot multitask. We are biologically incapable of processing information-rich inputs simultaneously. Studies show a person who is interrupted, by having a multitask, it will take them 50% longer to accomplish a task. Not only that, he or she makes up to 50% more errors.
Wow.
And he's a developmental molecular biologist. His name is John Medina, and he's written 12 brain rules that are principles for surviving and thriving at work, home, and school. And I wanted to read them real quick, if that's okay.
Please.
So again, this is the movement from survival mode into thriving in work, in home, in being in school. Number one rule, he says, is exercise will boost brain power. Number two is the human brain evolved too. Number three, every brain is wired differently. Number four, we don't pay attention to boring things. Humans won't pay attention to boring things. Number five, repeat to remember. Number six, remember to repeat. Number seven, sleep well and think well. Number eight, stressed brains do not learn the same way. Number nine, stimulate more of your senses. Now listen to this. Number 10 is vision trumps all senses, he said. So you need to stimulate your other senses, stimulate all of them. Number 11, male and female brains are different. That's a clarion call, right? In this society. Number 12, we are powerful and natural explorers. And out of those 12 rules, Medina thinks there are three that are the most important to the average person. And he said they are exercise, lessen your stress, and sleep well. Of those rules, exercise is very important.
Mm-hmm.
Movement. So
Movement.
moving the body, getting the energy
Yep.
out of the body.
Yep.
Stress, lessen the stress. That will
Mm.
come as you move into being and out of constant doing.
Sure.
And sleeping well.
So
And you'll
good.
sleep a lot better when you haven't bought into the lies of I am what I do, I am what I have, and I am who other people say I am.
Oh, totally. Because isn't that what's keeping people awake at night, right?
Yes.
We typically, people who cannot sleep well are rehearsing in their brain what people said or didn't say,
Yep. What they
what
have or
people
don't
think,
have.
what
Yep.
they have or don't have.
Yep. And
Totally.
what they need to be doing, they're not doing, they suck, they're not enough. They didn't get
What's on
that
the
thing
to-do
checked off.
list?
Yep.
To-do lists. I know people can like them, but I just think they're very, very much overrated.
Yep. I'm sorry
Be-
about that.
no
I got
worries,
a big
because
clank in my water bottle.
they're overrated because your productivity is not on the line. It's
Right.
never on the line because your productivity comes from your being. Again,
Yes.
that's not, sound like a broken record, but that's so counter cultural. It's counterintuitive because we're not taught that. We're not programmed with that. So just coming back and going, productivity, the most productive thing you can do is to be yourself,
Yes.
is to be in alignment with self, because even knowing what to do in a given situation, like, you wouldn't even know. Like, no one could know. Even when I look back on my own life and I go, what is it that I needed to be doing in life to be productive? It's not following any script. My parents sure didn't lay out that script for me, because if I was following their script, and that was a lot of suffering. So they didn't lay down the script, not consciously or purposely. It certainly wasn't my education, because my education was teaching me how to fit into a box, a system.
Absolutely.
It certainly wasn't well-meaning folks in the religious world that I was surrounded with,
No,
because they were
no.
following a
Oh,
program and a
totally.
box, mostly from
Totally.
survival mode. So the only way I could be productive and be who I am is I had to go right to the source, the same source that brought everything into being, which is another way of saying life. Life itself knows who I am and knows what I'm supposed to be doing.
Absolutely.
Life itself is who I am.
And life
So
itself
what?
is living through you.
Totally. So when I'm able to slow down, then you can hear yourself. You can start to pay attention to your passions, and that takes a lot of leeway, right? You almost have to become
Intentional.
free. Yeah, intentional, like a child, when you
Yeah.
have nothing on the to do,
Curious. Become
totally.
curious. And the idea of being yourself, well, in order to be yourself, you have to know yourself.
Yeah.
So even getting clear on, well, do I really know myself? How can I be myself if I don't even know who I am? So, and the only way that you're going to really move into that knowing of self is to, not buy into these programs, to
Yeah.
decondition, to deconstruct these programs that have told us we are what we do. We are the doer of action. That's the wholeness of who we are. That is not, it's a lie.
Mm-hmm.
So really coming back into being is about knowing the self and creating
Totally.
space in your life, rest, play, wonder, awe, stillness, contemplation, in order to discover and become curious about, well, who am I, darn it?
Hmm. Somebody said something really provocative recently, and it caused me to really think. And they were talking about the art of boredom. And they were basically saying that as a species, human beings are losing the ability to be bored.
To be bored.
And I thought about it, I was like, whoa, because first of all, nobody wants to be bored, right? We don't like it. But boredom is an interesting concept. I thought about it, like, well, boredom is a perception, right? If I'm bored, it means, you can imagine when you're a kid, you're going, well, there's nothing to do. So boredom is actually a statement saying nothing's happening,
Or
which
there's
is
nothing to
ridiculous.
do, which
Or there's nothing to do.
proves that you're maybe addicted to this idea of doing all the time.
Of doing. But typically people will look for things to do when they don't have a sense of their life. So for example, it may go without saying, but I tell people, especially in the coaching process, I'll say, hey, listen, your life, my life, I don't have a lot going on. I'm like, well, what if you did? What would a full life look like for you? And they always talk about things like, I love to travel. I'm a big traveler, but people talk about how I would travel. Like, okay, you would travel. I would have this experience. I would, maybe it's money. When people talk about their life, they're talking about things, usually talking about money, talking about experiences, talking about relationships, maybe talking about all these other things out here. And I always say that's not your life. Those are accessories, right? So there's nothing wrong with them, but we have clothes, right? Those are accessories. You have
Right.
jewelry. Those are accessories. But when you don't have a sense of your life, those things become your life.
Yes.
So now we have to have these things, right?
Yeah.
Because that's our life. And if I don't
Yeah.
have those things, I don't have life.
Right.
Now, people may not consciously say that, but life is so let's just say I didn't have money. And let's say I didn't have a car. And let's say I didn't have any clothes. I know we're being bleak here, but let's just hypothetically, let's say we had nothing, but I had life. And if somebody were to come to you with $1 million, $10 million, and said, let's make a trade, life for this money, you would not take it, even
Mm.
with nothing. Because what would you do with it?
Right.
You can't trade your life for all of these
Mm-mm.
things. So it's what we don't realize is, like, in that moment, you actually possess the very thing that is of infinite value that you would not trade for any amount of money
Mm-mm.
or possessions. So that's when we come back to, so boredom is a perception that I don't have enough going on out here.
Yeah.
And so therefore I need more things to do. And so I don't feel this discontent, but the discontent is being unaware of life. But boredom serves an important point. Like this person was saying, we are losing the ability to be bored. It's okay I always tell people, if you feel bored, it's okay. It's discomfort. It's showing you. So now there's some space created. The reason people don't like to be bored is because it doesn't feel pleasant.
Yeah. They're
So they look for
uncomfortable with
something.
stillness. I would say
Yeah,
it's more that just it's not even boredom. They may be equating it to boredom, but it's just an
right.
uncomfortableness because the busyness really does have a function. The payoff of it, I believe, is um, this idea of again buying into I am what I do, I am what I have, I am who other
Mhm.
people say I am. It keeps them from actually finding the source of life within. It has a
Sure.
function and from keeping them from knowing who they are. They may not be
Totally.
cognitively aware of that at all, you know.
Totally. And when you're bored, there's really what's going on. It's more unconscious, is a judgment. It's a judgment saying this moment's not happening the way I want it to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. But then that's
Which
back to the attachment to outcome then. You
totally.
have an attachment to an outcome, another perceived outcome.
And that's like giving God a performance evaluation. Anytime we do that,
Yeah.
anytime we say, yeah, today wasn't a good day. Like, oh, really? So what happened? And then we'll usually point to some event, but life is unfolding today.
Yes.
It's not good or bad. But whenever we put a judgment on it and we
Yeah.
say I don't like this moment, when someone says I'm bored, we're saying I don't like this moment. It's literally we're actually as a human being, we're then judging all of life. We're saying you're not really doing this correctly, life.
Right.
It's and when by life I mean, let's say that's the divine. We're saying, God, you're not really. Let's give you a performance evaluation. You're not cutting it today.
Mm-mm.
You're not doing it quite right today, which is a ridiculous thing.
It
We would never
is.
say that,
No.
but it's kind of what we're doing. But
Yes.
boredom serves a point. When we feel bored, it's showing us that we are attached to, like you said, an outcome doing. And if we don't feel bored, we won't know that that's happening. We'll just stay busy or distracted. So we
Yeah.
really need to feel bored to
Absolutely.
let that discomfort
Come
come to
up.
the surface.
Absolutely. And then
But
rather than even ascribing it to boredom, maybe getting curious about it. Well, am I uncomfortable with stillness and quiet? Why do I feel like I have to be doing something right now? Thinking something, participating in something, producing something, succeeding at something. On and on it goes. Mastery of tasks, you know?
100%. And I think one of the challenges, it's certainly it's not something we can't overcome, but the existence of these little things, right? These portable devices we
Yes.
hold. This is something we're going to have to learn how to navigate, because you just observe, like, you're traveling tomorrow, you're go to the airport. And what do people do when they're okay? So, people tend to get to the airport a couple hours early. You
Right.
get your ticket, you get your coffee, whatever it may be. You're sitting in the seat. What's the first thing people do?
On their phone.
Again, I don't want to make this a moral judgment, or you shouldn't do this, but there's a tendency to pull this thing up and start to scroll. And I get it. I'm part of that society too.
Me
But
too.
there's a tendency to do that as opposed to feel this moment,
Yeah.
because your only currency that you have is your focus.
Mm-hmm.
So where I choose to put that focus is what I'm spending the currency on. So if I pull out my portable device and focus there, it's not bad or good, but it is an expenditure of my focus. If I can, again, part of the multitasking, right? We constantly are multitasking by looking at certain things, looking at the phone, looking at TV, looking at this, looking at that. But when do we actually get a moment to just look at everything and nothing, and
Yeah.
just to be, just
Yeah.
to sit back and to feel this moment exactly the way it is, with no matter what's coming up? Maybe I'm feeling discontent, or maybe I'm feeling content, or maybe I just need to notice what's happening around me, and
Right.
just to be present. See, it's a challenge. It used to be easier when there was no technology or things draining us of our focus, but now we have to be much more intentional about it,
Well,
because
and
we're always
specifically
connected.
with a visual, like Medina was saying, we lean much more into the visual. Well, when you're looking at your phone, I mean, that's visual. So even just, in that moment, say in the airport tomorrow, for example, rather than quickly scrolling on my phone, like getting present with my other senses. He also talked about
Mhm.
that. Start homing in on smell, touch, taste, these other, what do I set here? What's going on, grounding. I mean, that's such a great way to ground in the present moment, is to simply, I mean,
Mhm.
even if you have to close your eyes, deliberately close the eyes, to bring in the
Totally.
other senses, to ground yourself in being. Gratitude, I would say, is another way to do that,
Mm,
to draw the energy back in and toward.
totally. Totally. Animals do that somewhat, in some ways, much better. Like, think about a dog in a car. You
Yeah.
know, I don't know that a dog could be bored in a car ride. That's the greatest thing in the world. A lot of dogs, they love it. You roll the window, you crack the window a little bit. I mean, they have their nose sticking
Yeah.
out,
Yeah.
and they're smelling. Like, obviously their noses are much more powerful than human noses, but they're picking up on all the scents everywhere. They're like I had a friend I always would say, like, it's like their Facebook, it's like their social media, is when they stick their head out the window, because they're picking up on everything going on. They're
Yeah.
paying attention to the whole thing. And it's like, yes, they're so happy. You can even see the joy. They love it. And it's
Not
just
worried
because
about
they're
the past or the future, just in the moment completely.
just taking it all in,
Yeah.
and what an opportunity we have every day to do that in any moment.
And that's so generative of energy. It just will generate energy to be that. Being
Isn't it interesting?
is generative.
Yes. It's like having a money printer.
Yes.
If we think of money as currency,
Yes.
the root word of currency is current or
Mm-hmm.
energy.
Mm-hmm.
How do you multiply or generate energy? You just come back to the source of it,
Right.
which is consciousness, presence in this moment. And what's magical is it like multiplies your energy. It's kind of like going to sleep at night, right? We plug our
Yes.
cell phones in to recharge them, but who plugs you in? Nobody. You're not plugged into anything.
Mm-mm.
So
Isn't that
just through
amazing?
that
Yeah.
stillness,
Yes.
you wake up several hours later and there's all this energy. Well, where did it come from? Who put it there?
Right. Isn't that
It was
amazing?
always there.
Was
It
always
just
there.
needed,
The
it
body
needed
stilled and got in flow with it.
totally,
Yeah.
totally.
The
That's one of
mind.
the things, in the coaching work that I do. We work on very subtle ways in the beginning to reduce resistance, to come back to being, to reestablish this order, right? Because we've unconsciously been programmed with, we got to have, so we got to doing, so we can have, so we can be. And we said, nope, we're going to be first, because it's free.
Absolutely.
It's free to be. And then from that, we do. And
So
then from that,
the
we
order
get
of
to have.
that is so perfect.
Totally. but it's a process of relearning how
It
to
is. And
become
the
productive.
relearning is going to be about the deconditioning, as much about the deconditioning, unplugging from these programs,
Yes.
deliberately, intentionally unplugging from them, becoming aware that they're there, and simply unplugging, not giving your energy. What is it? Energy flows where attention goes.
Yes, totally. Well, Aly, let me ask you this. When you're feeling, when for you personally, when you feel like, I don't know, like stressed or, not productive or pressed, what do you do um to come back to this place of being?
Breathing is a big
Okay.
box breathing,
Okay.
gratitude, pulling the energy back in,
Hmm.
grounding, trying to get into my senses, my other senses more.
Hmm.
Meditating is huge for me.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, those I think would be the top things.
Beautiful. I love
You,
it.
how about you?
Yeah, for me, I come back to what I love about every day is that it when you wake up, like my whole life is today.
Yeah,
So whatever yesterday was doesn't matter
yeah,
because it's gone. So when I wake up in the morning, I feel like I get a brain. I just hit the lottery.
yeah. It's
That's
like
how I
getting an
feel.
A, waking up with an A.
Yeah, totally. It's like, oh my gosh, totally.
Yeah,
Bank account's full.
exactly.
I got
Like,
a full life. It's today. So first thing I do is I go, okay, I want to hydrate because it's been
yeah, yeah,
several
yeah.
hours since I've drinking. So the first thing I do is squeeze lemon in a glass of water
Yep,
in the morning and drink the lemon water. The lemon
yep.
water obviously there's health benefits to it, but it's
I
it's
do the same
also
thing.
it's replenishing, right? And it's
Yes.
also hydrating. It's also cleansing the liver and all of that. That's first thing to do. And then um, I look at the sky. I get a glimpse of
Mm,
the sky and bow
yeah.
because it's giving reverence to the thing you can't even name or the essence or substance of life, which is transcendent, but it's everywhere and nowhere. So
Yes.
you're basically honoring the source in that moment. And that's what I do. I acknowledge that I am not here as an independent entity driving my life forward through my own effort. I go, no, I'm
Being
participating with
lived.
this
Yes.
thing. Yeah, I'm being lived through this transcendent force. I don't care what name you put on it. We call this the
Yes.
and bigger than the small thing that I refer to as me. Um, and I just acknowledge that very practically by looking up in the expanse and bowing to that. And then I have a practice that I do. It's a 38-minute yoga practice that incorporates in that specific practice. It incorporates certain movements to stretch energy, to move energy through the body.
Mm,
There's breathing, there's regulating the energy system through breath,
yeah.
and then there's stillness, and it's all
Yes.
part of that practice. And it's a 38-minute practice, and I do that every day. And those are the things that for me, I can tell I can tell when I have bought into the programming because I feel like I don't have time to do those things. Because and then I say, well, if I don't have time, that means there's more important things to do, more productive things to do than sitting. A lot of it's just sitting, right, and breathing. Like,
Yes.
but I say, oh, well, then that's the programming, right?
There he
What's
is.
more important
Yep.
than paying
Yep.
attention to life, right? Because
Exactly. Life being breathed in and through you.
the truth is, I don't do anything.
Yeah.
That's the truth. None of us
Yeah.
do. We do
Mm-mm.
nothing. Even Jesus said this, right? So Jesus said, the Son, referring to himself, says, does nothing on
Nothing.
his own,
Yep.
but that
Yes.
what the Father or source, if we want to, that what the Father does, that's what the Son does. Basically,
Yep.
another way to say is what the source does, that's what I do.
Yep.
Because whatever the source, because remember, the engine that's driving all of this
Is the
forward
source.
is the source.
Mm-hmm.
And I, as a human, temporary body
Yep.
mind construct in this field, in this dimension, I simply get into alignment with that.
Yep.
That's it. That's the most productive thing you can do every single day.
Yep.
And you don't do it by multitasking. You do it by letting go.
It's so true. Isn't that so true?
Yes.
Absolutely. So, so true. Yeah.
It's a
Letting go.
process. It's a practice.
Yep. When you say that, it reminds me of the myth of Michelangelo, where it's the stranger walks up to Michelangelo when he's carving David. And I may have said this before on this podcast, I'm not sure, but the stranger says, how did you know that he was in there? How did you know David was in there? In this stone, that was just this big block. And he said, I just took away everything that wasn't him. That's the action in our lives.
That's it, isn't it?
We just allow, we participate in the deconditioning and the deeper programming, which is chipping away at that, so that what is always there, already has been there, can be revealed. So that's what it is.
Absolutely. And then what ends up happening is you end up getting invited on this adventure. Yes. Once you let go, it's like somebody with a magic carpet comes up and says, hey, take a ride with me. I know that's cheesy, but it's like, that's the image, like, hey, let's go on this adventure together. You can, when you let go, because now you're free. You're free to go on the trip.
Yep. And it's magical. And it's just magical. Yeah. So much of life, Jamal, isn't it that? Just learning to let go. Really.
That's it.
It truly, truly is about that.
Totally. And it's replenishing, but obviously the exhaustion that so many of us are facing is because there's too many things on the to-do list. And again, nothing wrong with that, but what's driving it is this feeling of the sensation of I'm not productive. Yeah. I'm not where I should be in life. Yeah. I should be further ahead than I am. Yeah. I should have more money than I do. All of those sensations drive the productivity. Yeah. Or when I say productivity, I should say multitasking, because it's not productive, but it's, we think we are, right? But that's the idea. That's what's driving it. But if we let go of that, we come back and say most productive thing you can do is be right here with life. And
it's interesting, your analogy at the front of Europe, of middle age. I'm very middle age, and I would say that that's really true, because the experience now, you've lived long enough experientially that it's borne itself out. Like, well, hasn't worked. This lie that I believe that I am what I have, I am what I do, and I have who other people say I am. My attachment to doing and, succeeding and all that goes along with that. The addiction to busyness. You've lived longer to see, well, this is just, it's not bearing out in my body physically, certainly. You know what I'm saying? It's just, you hit walls again and again. Thank God that, our experience, we experience what we've put into the field. We experience what we created. That's how we learn, Totally. It comes back around to go, well, that didn't really work out so well. And you do that enough, you get to by middle age, you're like, okay. I think I need to shift this.
Intrinsically, we know that that's why people want to retire, right? Because it's not sustainable.
It's not sustainable.
But what if we can live in a sustainable way? Where is retirement? You don't need to retire.
You don't need to retire. Exactly.
You live your life. There's no retirement when you're living.
Exactly. You're living for a living.
Living for a living. You only retire when you're working.
Exactly.
For survival, I should say. Working for survival. But
so true. So true.
Yeah.
So good.
It's really good. Thank you, Aly. Thank you for this conversation.
Thank you. Yeah. Maybe you can put like a link to the, that documentary is profound. It's the year the earth changed.
The year the earth changed. We'll totally do that. Put that in the show notes. Yeah. The earth changed.
I can send it to you when I get off too. I'll send you the link.
Perfect. And we'll get that up there. And yeah, if you're listening to this, guys, check out the documentary that Aly's referring to. And as always, we'd love to hear your thoughts and comments and any questions you may have about this. Again, this is, we just, our desire to bring these conversations to you is so that you can, all of us, this podcast can be a tool for you to evaluate, right? To evaluate, to slow down this leakage of energy, because we all are extremely wealthy. Every one of us have tremendous wealth, and where you spend it is up to you, right? So we don't want to squander it. not because there's a lack of it, but because it's precious. You want to keep it, and you want to direct it where you want it to go. And none of us want to be exhausted, right? So exhaustion is just is your body's way of saying, hey, I'm spending my currency of energy in a way that's totally out of alignment with who I am. That's all that is just an indicator. It's not because there's a lack of energy. You're just spending it in a way that's out of alignment. So we'll just bring it back. That's what we do when we stop this incessant kind of to-do list and multitasking and trying to get ahead. We come back and we let go of that, and we say, okay, the most productive thing I can do is to be.
Yes. Is to be with me.
Is to be.
Yep.
Is to be.
I love it. I love
So
it.
Aly, have a great trip out
you.
west, or out east, I should say, to Wisconsin and North Carolina.
Yes. And you have a good
we will
move coming up too.
Yes, we sure will. And we'll see you in next month on the podcast.
Yay, absolutely. Thank you so much, Jamal.
Of course, thank you. And until next time, guys, take care. Bye-bye.